If you've ever left a meeting thinking to yourself, here we go again, you're not alone. That moment when two passionate people are going back and forth, listening to respond rather than listening to understand, it is so common. And normally we think of this as a people problem, but it's not. It's a structural problem. It's what I call a here we go again loop. And chances are you've experienced it or people in your organization are experiencing it right now. In this video, I'm going to talk about what that looks like, why it's so common, and the counterintuitive solution to making those here we go again loops turn into a team culture where people actually have one another's backs. Okay, so let's talk about what these here we go again loops look like. Oftentimes they start where you know they're present when you hear people saying things like, that team, they're just throwing things over the fence, or they're not responding to our requests, or they're making decisions in a silo. Whatever is happening, we know that one team is working in ways that make it more difficult for another team. So that first team, what do? They go and talk to the other team. They try to give feedback, or maybe they complain, and all they hear back is some version of yeah, but, and reasons why that second team isn't going to change anything. So that first team, what do? They try to find ways to work around the issue. And that really means working around the other team. So the same problems keep bubbling up over and over until sooner or later, one team or the other decides to seek out the help of a higher up to go fix the issue, which really means go fixing the other team. And that's what I call a here we go again loop. And maybe this is resonating for you. And inevitably, whenever a here we go again loop happens, it creates what I call a referee leader. And a referee leader is that leader, that higher up that has to step in and make the decision, throw the penalty flag, get the conversation moving once again. And whenever this happens, I think it has a cost to the organization in a couple of different ways. Operationally, this causes decision-making to slow down, it impairs effective execution, and it undermines a team's ability to scale. And on top of that, from a cultural standpoint, what it does is it is the genesis of counterproductive politics. It undermines trust, and let's be honest, it takes all the fun out of work. And in my experience, the real casualty here is trust, right? Because it's really hard to trust other teams when they're operating in ways that make your day, your work, that much more difficult. Now, the strange thing about here we go again loops is they're so common. I see them in every type of organization, in just about every size. They're so common, but they don't work for anyone, right? The two teams involved, they don't appreciate being caught in a here we go again loop. And the referee leader certainly doesn't enjoy being part of that process. So no one would design for a here we go again loop, but they're like the common cold of organizations. So why is that? Why are they so common? It's because, I think, people make the mistake of believing that solutions are more valuable than problems. We even have a saying for this, right? Don't bring me solutions, or don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. Maybe you've said this yourself. You've heard people say this in your organization. It's a common way to think about situations like this. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some wisdom in this saying, right? You want your people to actually give thought to the problems they're trying to solve before they bring them to you. You don't want your desk to end up as a complaint department for problems in the organization. So there's some wisdom here. But if this way of thinking were adequate for breaking these here we go again loops, then we wouldn't have them. And yet they're everywhere. So how should people be thinking about these here we go again loops if you want to change things? It's critical that people move from this notion that solutions are more valuable than problems to recognizing that problems are actually more valuable than solutions. The saying that goes with that might be something like, don't bring me solutions, bring me problems. So I'm going to break that down for you in the next couple of slides here. I want you to imagine a situation, in this case, between supply chain and sales. And I'm going to break that down through the lens of a here we go again loop. But this is just as easily could be the quality team and the production team. I've even seen here we go again loops on two sides of the same marketing team, okay? So I'll talk about it in the context of supply chain and sales, but I think more generally, this applies to just about any cross-functional relationships, even those that exist within leadership teams. So I want you to imagine we have a supply chain and sales situation, right? And there's some natural tension in these two groups, or between these two groups, I should say. And I want you to imagine that supply chain, once again, they got a large rush order from sales at the end of the month. It's the third month in a row they don't have the inventory. It's going to be an expensive order to fill. So what are they thinking? Well, sales is out of control, right? What's the solution to sales is out of control? Tell the customer no, right? All makes sense from the supply chain side. And in most cases like this, we view effectiveness as, if we're supply chain, taking this piece of software and installing it in the mind of sales, right? That's what being effective looks like. That's what leadership looks like. The problem we run into when we try to do that is we run into an entirely different wall of experience. Sales knows if they don't take this order, not only are they going to miss out on the opportunity, it's quite likely that they'll miss out on the relationship. So they say yes. And when they try to run that ball through the organization, they run into a wall of what they would call supply chain bureaucracy, right? Stage gate meetings, buying committee meetings, spreadsheets, etc. They think to themselves, supply chain is too tight. So what's the solution to supply chain is too tight? Oh, come on, just this once, right? Now notice the interlocking nature of these problem solution sets, right? The solution on the supply chain side, tell the customer no, is the problem on the sales side, too tight. And the solution on the sales side, just this once, is the problem on the supply chain side. Sales is out of control. This is what I call a right-on-right fight. That's because if I sat down with supply chain and heard their story, I would leave that conversation thinking, you know what, you've got a point. Someone needs to go talk to sales. So I would go talk to sales and I would hear their story and I would leave that conversation thinking, you know what, you're right too. Another way to think about this is what it looks like to be 100% right in a 200% world, right? You have both parties that have an internal coherent logic to their point of view, and no one is willing to walk away from that conversation. So how do they have the conversation? Well, typically it happens at the level of solution, right? You see this arm wrestling match that becomes the here we go again loop I was just talking about a moment ago. Back and forth, each side attempting to convince the other that their solution is the one that matters. But that goes nowhere as long as there are two different problem definitions in play, right? If those problem definitions don't match, there's no way these two sides can work as partners. So yeah, 100% right in a 200% world. It's not that either side, the mistake that our minds want to make is we assume that, well, since I'm right, 100% right, as a matter of fact, since I'm right and the other side, they're in a different place, well, they must be wrong. But it doesn't work like that in a 200% world. At issue here is that neither side is right enough to create the type of partnership they need to move forward together, okay? So I've come to realize after working with dozens of organizations and hundreds of here we go again loops, that really what a here we go again loop is an influence problem. Neither side is able to influence the problem to support their point of view. So how can we generate influence in these situations? Well, I think our influence is a function of our ability to solve, in this case, my problem, with the ability to solve your problem. Because if I'm proposing solutions to your problem, you're no longer my adversary, you're actually my supporter. You're going to support what I'm suggesting because it makes your life easier. So if I'm going to gain influence, I need to be able to solve your problem. To do that, I need to be able to understand what your problem is. And the number one thing that gets in the way of me understanding your problem, it's my solution, right? So that's why I've come to the realization that in situations like this, it's all about don't bring me solutions, bring me problems. And in order to do this, I've learned that teams need to make 3 critical mindset shifts. The good news is these are highly teachable shifts. People can get them pretty quickly, and they're durable. That is, they tend to alter the shape of cross-team conversations on a permanent basis. So if you want to have less here we go again loops in your organization, here are the 3 mindset shifts you and your people most likely need to make that happen. The first mindset shift is from closed to open. This is about how we approach the other party. The second mindset shift is about moving from static to dynamic. This is our relationship to our problem definition. And the third shift is moving from problem to partner. This is how we view the other party in the conversation. I'm going to break down each of these in a quick fashion so you have a better sense of what they're all about. So in this first mindset shift from closed to open, you remember in the here we go again loop slide, I highlighted how most people enter into these loop conversations with a solution in mind, right? Supply chain was saying, tell the customer no. Sales was saying just this once. When we enter into a conversation with a solution already in mind, our mind is made up. We could say our mind is closed, right? If I know the answer, I've got nothing to learn from the other side, so why even bother? We enter into the conversation closed. That is the first step in a loop. So if you're going to break these loops, it means shifting to open. What does that look like? Whether it's for you or for your people, it's about finding ways that the other side might be right. Instead of coming into the conversation with a solution in mind, what you do is you spend time before the conversation, or let's say after the last loop, spend some time thinking about, well, why might that salesperson in this case, why might they be right? Right? What are they really trying to accomplish? And a generic but likely accurate version of that in this case would be like, hey, you're concerned if we don't take this order, we're going to jeopardize a critical relationship. If your person, assuming you're on the supply chain side, if your person brings that story into that conversation, you know what they're going to hear? They're going to hear exactly from the salesperson, right? That's because we all resonate when people share our experience with us. And if we want to gain credibility and influence with others, the best way to do that is to play back their experience to them with such precision that they come back to us with something like, exactly, that's right, you get it. Because every time someone says you get it to us, or exactly, that's a sign that they see us as getting it. And I think the truth of the matter is we trust people who get it, and we listen to people who trust. Listen to people that we trust. So every time someone says exactly to us, we're earning trust and influence. Okay? So once we establish the story that is true for the other side, then we move to mindset shift number 2, which is about moving from static to dynamic. And in this one here, this is about our relationship to the problem definition. You may remember in the Here We Go Again loop slide that sales and supply chain were solving 2 different problems, right? Supply chain was saying sales is out of control. Sales was saying supply chain is too tight, okay? You've got to get on the same problem definition if you're going to work as partners. That's the only way out of a Here We Go Again loop. So instead of getting stuck or remaining static on our problem definition, we've got to go dynamic. It's kind of like calling an audible in football, right? When things on the field are not what we thought they were, we have to be willing to change the play. That's what going from static to dynamic is. In this case, it has to do with the problem definition. And the best way into this is to look at what each side is complaining about, right? Because each side, in this case, is complaining about what the other side is doing or not doing, etc. What I've come to realize is that every complaint is really a commitment in disguise. That is, we only complain about the things that we care about. If we don't care, there's no point in complaining, right? So when you have 2 sides complaining, one about the other, they already know a bit about, or they can make some good guesses as to what the other side cares about. So let's see if we can break that down. On the supply chain side, we see that they're complaining sales is out of control. Now, the only reason people would complain about being out of control is that they care about being in control, right? So just the fact that supply chain is complaining in this way, we already know that they care about process discipline. Let's take a look at the sales side. We know they're complaining supply chain is too tight, right? So they want some room to cut some deals, to make things happen, to respond to the market. We know that sales is concerned about options and flexibility. Now let me ask you this. In your organization, do you need process discipline in order to be successful? Chances are the answer is yes. In your organization, do you need options and flexibility in order to be successful? Again, chances are the answer is yes. Our minds want to bring an either-or filter to these types of problems, but that's not big enough. We need to bring an and filter. In this case, the only way out of this loop is for both the supply chain person and the salesperson to land on the same problem definition. In this case, that's a larger problem definition than either party brought into the conversation. In this case, it's solving the process discipline and the options and flexibility problem. When two sides can get into that same problem definition, that's when you can start to be hopeful that they can be partners. Now, I'll be honest with you. It's a lot easier to solve the process definition problem, right? We know what the answer is to that. Tell the customer no, get in line. And the answer to the options of flexibility problem, that's pretty easy too. Come on, make an exception. Cut us a break just this once. Solving for process discipline and options and flexibility is a more complicated problem to solve for. It's going to take a lot of thinking. But this is what sets the stage for the partnership. Because if I'm on the supply chain side and I'm committed to solving both sides of this problem, well then I need the help of sales to figure that out. They're going to tell me what good process, what good options of flexibility looks like. Same holds true for sales, right? So if I can get into the same problem definition with the other person, well, mindset shift number 3 kind of takes care of itself, because I no longer see that other person as a problem that I need to solve. I actually start to see them as a partner in generating solutions that could work. And if you change the problem definition, in this case you expand it, well then you change the universe of potential solutions, right? Because solutions are known by the problems they solve. Change the problem definition and the solution set changes. So what I see again and again as two parties, sometimes 3, step into the same problem definition, they start talking about solutions that they could not have imagined before. And sooner or later, they're going to identify one, and they're going to be able to land on that and run some energy through it. This is what it looks like to kind of ground the circuit, right? In the here we go again loop, another way to think about that is it's a blown fuse. And the blown fuse looks like escalating to the boss, right? But when two parties get curious about what one another's stories are, they land on the same problem definition, and they start working together as partners, well, that changes the energy flow of the conversation and allows them to identify solutions that actually ground the circuit. The fuse stops breaking, people start working together, etc. And I've seen this happen enough times between cross-functional teams and in leadership teams that I've come to believe that this is true, that the problem isn't the problem. The problem is how people deal with the problem. And if people can learn to deal with the problem using these 3 mindset shifts, the problem is actually the way that they build trust and improve performance together. So if you found this relevant to the challenges you face in your organization, there is a white paper here available on this page. You can put in your email address and I'll send it to you. It'll be immediately accessible to you on this website. That'll walk you through how do you take people through those 3 mindset steps in very kind of practical, stepwise, in a very practical and stepwise fashion. And if you check it out, I think you'll find it useful in reducing the number of here we go again loops in your organization, starting with the next escalation to your desk.